Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing, as well as analysing tech news, which as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully, you are having an amazing day. We have an awful lot of news to get through in this particular video, so let's just start things out with Intel and Rocket Lake. Rocket Lake has been a mysterious platform as well as processor, because, quite frankly, there has been an awful lot of conflicting information. Rocket Lake will be Intel's 11th generation processors. Of course, we're currently on the 9th generation, awaiting the 10th generation, which will be Comet Link to launch in the next while. The exact release date hasn't been released publicly. However, when it comes to Rocket Lake, there have been some very interesting rumours. We've known that it's built on the 14nm process for a while, insert plus meme here, but information seems to point to some type of backport from a future architecture onto 14nm. Indeed, I actually released an exclusive video some time ago, I can't remember exactly when, but it was the latter part of last year, that Rocket Lake would indeed be built on Sony Cove. It would be an enhanced version of Sony Cove. But then someone else emailed me and told me, nope, that's not quite right. Indeed, from what they were aware, Rocket Lake would be built on Willow Cove, which of course architecturally is the successor to Sony Cove. And then others have told me it's not quite that. Instead, it's kind of like a Skylake architecture, albeit with some tweaks and enhancements. Either way, a slide from videocards.com possibly provides us some answers. The new processor core architecture, well, right here seems to imply that it is an entirely new architecture. It's not saying it's an enhanced architecture, which likely means that it's not Skylake based. At least that's how I'm reading it. Technically, you could say, well, it's a tweaked, enhanced version of Skylake, but I think Intel would actually state that in the slide. Generally, these type of slides, Intel are very honest with. At least that's my experience. They also state directly below that there's a new Xe graphics architecture, which would to me imply that it is Willow Cove based. We'll get back to that in just a moment. However, let's quickly look at the rest of the slide. I'm going to ignore things like enhanced display. I know that's important to some people, but I think most of my viewers will probably just be plonking in a discrete graphics card. There are new overclocking features and capabilities. I'd love to know exactly what that means, because honestly the 9900K, I don't know about the 10900K, but the 9900K on a semi-decent Z390 motherboard is pretty damn feature-packed. You can of course overclock quite easily just by typing in, let's say, a times 50, and even leaving voltages and everything else to default behavior. It basically overclocks itself nowadays. But you can also use offsets, overclock memory. So for example, if you want to have an AVX offset, if you're having problems with AVX workloads when you're overclocking, you can do that, and so on and so on. So there's an awful lot to play with already, so I wonder how this will change with Rocket Lake, whether it's going to be more AMD-like, whether they're just going to tweak things overall. Be very interested to see. Increase DDR4 speeds without actually stating what, so perhaps over 3000 MHz officially supported, although of course you can go much higher than that unofficially. But the big change here to me is how PCIe is changing. PCIe 3 is of course what we expect for Comet Lake, but here it looks like Intel are offering 20 PCIe 4 lanes. There will be 4 which will be attached to an NVMe device, and then you also have 16, which of course will be usable for a graphics card. I don't think that GPUs right now are going to benefit from PCIe 4, but next year, especially when the next generation consoles really come into the swing of things, I can see that, particularly given that the transfer of data to and from the SSD, and also what we've seen when it comes to texture swapping to the GPU, texture streaming, excuse me, I can see that extra memory bandwidth is going to be extremely important between the CPU and GPU, and also presumably the SSD. As for the graphics architecture, well, the question is, what will be the core count and what will be the clock frequency? From Skylake to Ice Lake, there's a rough, or Sunny Cove if you prefer, there's a roughly 18% better IPC. And then moving to Willow Cove, once again, depending upon the application, it's between 8%, 10%, can be a little bit more. So there could be a pretty big jump. However, rumours are that we're only going to be seeing 10 processor cores for Rocket League S. Although you could arguably say that that's probably enough for desktop. But you have to remember that by this point, AMD should launch Zen 3, and it should be extremely impressive. My own leaks have seemed to confirm that there's going to be quite a tremendous increase in IPC for Zen 3. I've actually gone deeper into Intel's, reaction to AMD, and also some of the Zen 3 stuff in separate videos, so I'll try to remember to link them in the video description. And now we're going to move over to some next generation stuff. There's an absolutely fascinating video that is on YouTube, so if you are a developer interested in graphics technology, that type of arena, then I would highly suggest you check it out. I'll link it in the video description. But it is titled Advanced Mesh Shaders, and it is produced by Martin Fuller for the DirectX Developer Day. And here we have a demonstration of mesh shaders. I'll get into that in just a second. But this demo was running on two distinct systems. One comprised an RTX 2080 Ti, which is of course Nvidia's current flagship GPU, and the second, which I suspect many of you are going to be interested in, is the Xbox Series X. So this is essentially a demo demonstrating how long it takes to render specific objects using certain techniques to make the process as efficient as possible. Now, I will go into a simplistic explanation in this video, but as regular viewers know, I'm currently working on a series of videos going into fine detail about the differences between both consoles. So eventually I will be discussing things like variable rate shading, mesh shading, and yada yada yada, where I'll go more in depth. But for now, this video, I just want to keep it as simplistic as possible. But anyway, basically the developer built 5 rooms, and then from different viewing angles, essentially, the time to render that specific viewpoint was then shown on screen, and you can see it right there in the number of microseconds. So basically, when you're rendering a specific object, if an object or a part of an object is blocked by a wall or another object in general, or of course is outside of the camera's viewpoint, then rendering that object, drawing that object is pointless. You're essentially wasting GPU time. So anyway, culling and efficiency is an extremely in-depth topic, and one of the changes for DirectX 12, one of the updates, which of course is now titled DirectX 12 Ultimate, are mesh shaders. Now, to be fair, Nvidia actually pioneered mesh shaders back in 2018 when they launched the RTX 20 series of GPUs. And quite frankly, I do think that while the RTX 20 series wasn't perfect on launch, Nvidia certainly did developers, if nothing else, a big favour, because obviously it's allowed developers to have some familiarity now with ray tracing and all of this other stuff. So it's kind of funny because even DirectX DXR for Minecraft is ultimately being used in many ways for the Xbox Series X version of the port. So it's kind of interesting how all of this is just tied together. Nvidia also back then released the Asteroids mesh shader demo. There were 2 demo systems that were set up, the RTX 2080 Ti on the left running at 1440p, and the Xbox Series X, which was on the right at 4K. However, exact performance figures are very difficult to ascertain between the two, because just small differences in the viewport distance from object with the camera and so on can make a tremendous difference in the amount of detail that the GPU needs to render, and therefore a tremendous difference in the performance of this specific example that was shown. But regardless, the difference between vertex shaders versus mesh shaders is massive. The render time is cut down to almost half, whether it's the Xbox Series X or the RTX 2080 Ti. The Ti also renders roughly 40 microseconds, I was about to say 40 seconds, about 40 microseconds with the regular pass method, but once again, remember that this is just 1440p, whereas the Xbox Series X is running at 4K, and the Xbox is rendering it in around 100 microseconds. So this can drop to just 55 microseconds when using meshlet sphere culling, which is once again an advanced culling technique. And as I said, there's also a significant drop when you use the same technology on the RTX 2080 Ti. As it turns out right now, this particular technology is only available for RDNA 2 based GPUs. So for the desktop, we're going to have to wait for AMD's Navi 2X GPUs, which I've been told is going to be called the RX 6000 series. That will launch, of course, in the latter part of this year. It's looking like it's going to be Q4, and Nvidia currently already has a GPU series which can support all of this stuff, RTX 20. So unfortunately, if you have an RX 5000 series card, it doesn't look like you're going to be able to take advantage of any of this technology. Furthermore, of course, you would miss out on features like ray tracing, much like if you own Pascal. And the very final talking point for today is from Jason Schreier, who was recently speaking in Kotaku's Split Screen podcast, which was episode 222. I'll link it, of course, in the video description. According to Jason Schreier, he believes that the PlayStation 5 is actually superior in many ways to the Xbox Series X. He says, and I quote, "Everybody right now is just seeing the spec sheet and saying the PS5 is 10.2 T-flops and the Xbox Series X is 12 T-flops. Meanwhile, the people I've been speaking to over the past few months, over the past few years, who are actually working on the PlayStation 5, have pretty much unanimously said that the thing is a beast. It is one of the coolest pieces of hardware that we've seen or used, and so many things here are, quote, revolutionary." He goes on to say that the PlayStation 5 isn't really that much behind the Xbox Series X, despite the T-flop number. He believes that Sony dropped the ball, and for the next several months, especially with cough, 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 that's disrupting things, people are just going to go with the narrative that the Xbox is more powerful. Meanwhile, and I'm going to read this verbatim, I'm getting texts and DMs, and even today, as this was going on, developers are saying stuff like, "This is such a shame, PS5 is so superior in all these other ways that they're not actually able to message right now and we can't talk about it right now. I heard from at least 3 different people in the past couple of hours since the Sony talk being like, the PS5 is actually the more superior piece of hardware in a lot of different ways compared to what you're seeing on these paper spec sheets." And again, yes, plenty of room to talk about this, but all the companies keep messaging and showing games, but I think that Sony dropped the ball from what we've seen. My personal feeling is that in some areas the PlayStation will have an advantage, in others the Xbox will have an advantage, in other areas they will probably be much the same. But with these statements from Jason, with his discussions with developers, we don't really know what areas the PlayStation is winning, at least in their eyes and experience. So we do know that the PlayStation does have a much faster SSD, which is great, but does the narrower, faster GPU provide some performance benefits? In my analysis, I said that I can certainly see the PlayStation 5 having some advantages with a narrower, faster design. However, ray tracing performance for the Xbox is inevitably going to be better. With what we know about RDNA 2 anyway, it's looking like that's almost a certainty. So, I would like for the developers to have provided some more insight into this. And I don't believe that this is going to be a situation like with the Xbox One, where the ESRAM was just a thorn in the side for games development throughout the console's life cycle. I truly believe that both consoles here are going to be significantly more powerful than perhaps we can imagine as of the time that I'm recording this video. One issue I think with Sony's messaging was that with the phrase even road to PS5, people weren't actually even taking into consideration that it was a GDC talk or anything like that. All they really were thinking is road to PS5 equals announcement. And they were kind of going into it with eager expectation, thinking that Mark was going to reveal lots of key details about the system. And we were going to, see lots of gameplay demos and all this stuff. And ultimately, I think Sony really screwed up with the messaging. I don't think Microsoft did a perfect job either with the Xbox Series X. I think, honestly, both companies kind of revealed some stuff too early. I think with the Xbox, they should have probably revealed some of the key specs, but held back some stuff, and then waited until later on when they were comfortable to show some actual demos of the machines, because that's a common complaint. It's like, yeah, the Xbox stuff looks really impressive, but ultimately we have Gears 5, which is essentially running at slightly higher than PC settings. We have Minecraft with path tracing enabled, and all looks really cool, but I think specific demos which were publicly available would have been the better way to go with Xbox. And with the PlayStation, I think what they should have done, Sony that is to probably have revealed key elements of the machine at first. I think one thing that's really harming the PlayStation is that we don't even know what it looks like. So even from my point of view as a YouTuber, it's such a pain in the ass to even figure out what do I do with a YouTube thumbnail for the console. It's like I can use the logo, I can use the prototype development kit, I can use fan-based renders, or like what do you do? And it's so difficult, especially when you're talking about both elements in the machine when Microsoft's console is right there. This is a really weird situation. Sony did such a good job with the PlayStation 4 message, but this year they seem to have just been really fumbling. And I don't think that's necessarily bad in terms of the console. I think the console itself is going to be really cool, but I think the messaging around the console has definitely been a big problem this generation. And I'm going to be very curious to see how they handle things going forward. I think what they should have done is, at the very least, kind of provide some tease images of the console. Even if it wasn't the full thing, even if they didn't reveal the entire system, show a joypad, show some part, some angle of the system, even if the design isn't fully finished yet, just a part of the console, just so that we can be like, okay, cool, this is awesome. Instead, I think their messaging has been a bit weird for this generation. As for the specification side of the equation, though, I largely agree. What I'm hearing is that both consoles are going to be insanely powerful. I'm hearing, though, that it's going to take longer for developers to get their head around the Xbox Series X because of the wider design. I tackled this more extensively in a recent video. I'll once again link it in the video description. But basically, because of the wider design, it's going to take more time for developers to fully saturate and use the potential of the Xbox Series X. But with the PlayStation 5, I think it's probably going to be easier for developers to just start and to get the most out of the machine. With that said, though, I think both systems are going to be quite the learning curve, and in some ways the Xbox is going to have some major advantages, simply because of how the RDNA 2 architecture works. Ray tracing is most likely going to be more capable on the Xbox, for example. So anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. The normal stuff, if you have, like, share, comment and subscribe. And I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.